You say that this is a mirror of what we're living in our broader society.
I feel like sports, politics, and culture always intersect. I think the story of Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese, the rivalry, which really isn't a bad rivalry or a true rivalry.
I think there's a lot of racism when it comes to it, and I don't believe she stands on any of that. Angel Reese's words about Caitlin Clark's fans hit like a thunderbolt, exposing the ugly side of women's basketball's newfound popularity. And she's right. Clark herself has told reporters, people should not be using my name to push those agendas. But here's what's crazy, while Clark gets a $28 million Nike deal celebrated across media, Reese faces death threats and racial slurs for speaking up. One WNBA player even received an email with the N-word, threatening sexual assault and beheading. How did a rivalry between two talented athletes turn so dark? The answer might make you question everything you've heard. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So, did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back.
Just based on where they come from, how they were raised, and how they conduct themselves. So when we see Angel Reese doing the "you can't see me" ring finger to Caitlin Clark, the optics of this black girl really taunting this white girl was hard for all of America to see. Is a good thing. I understand that both of these young ladies, and I'll relate it to the race in just one moment. Both of these young ladies were already defined, and they already had to play roles before they even stepped on the court.
You ever notice how the media treats different players? Let's look at Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese. Same league, same talent, totally different stories in the press. It's like they're playing in two different worlds, even though they're on the same court. Clark signs this massive $28 million Nike deal, and suddenly she's basketball royalty. Every headline celebrates her. The savior of women's basketball, the future of the WNBA. Revolutionary talent. The media can't get enough of her. And look, she's amazing. No one's denying that. But the way they talk about her compared to other players, that's where things get weird. When Angel Reese shows the same competitive fire, speaks her mind, or shows emotion on the court, suddenly the narrative flips. She's aggressive, she's classless, she's the villain of the story. The contrast is so obvious, it's painful. Clark gets praised for her passion, while Reese gets criticized for the exact same qualities. What's really disturbing is how some sports analysts actively create these narratives. Take Jason Whitlock. He actually used the phrase Caitlin Clark assaulted in a tweet describing when Dijanai Carrington accidentally poked Clark in the face during a game. He didn't stop there. He followed up by writing that Dijanai Carrington stabbed Caitlin Clark in the eye with a fingernail. Stabbed? Really? It was incidental contact during a basketball game. This framing isn't just misleading, it's dangerous. It plays into historical stereotypes about the delicate white flower needing protection from supposedly aggressive black players. When an analyst with a platform uses words like assaulted and stabbed to describe normal basketball contact, they're not just reporting, they're creating a narrative with real consequences. Social media comments show exactly how these narratives affect fans. After that same incident, people were calling for Carrington's suspension. Some even sent death threats. Meanwhile, when Clark plays physical or talks trash, the exact same fans praise her competitive spirit. It's a complete double standard. What's crazy is that these media figures know exactly what they're doing. These narratives aren't accidents. They're calculated to generate clicks and views by playing into existing racial stereotypes. They're banking on certain reactions because they know how sections of their audience already think. It's not journalism, it's exploitation. The media isn't just reporting on a rivalry, they're creating one by pushing this good versus evil storyline. They're casting Clark as the hero and Reese as the villain when neither player asked for those roles. The WNBA commissioner Kathy Engelbert seemed more interested in how the Clark-Reese rivalry affected business and boosted the league's bottom line than in addressing the pain these narratives inflict on players. You want to know what makes this even worse? Clark and Reese don't even have a real beef. They've played against each other since high school with mutual respect. Sure, there was that moment in the championship game that got all the attention, but one competitive moment doesn't equal a lifelong rivalry. The The question isn't just about basketball anymore. It's about who gets to be the face of women's sports and why certain players get pushed into roles they never asked for. Why does one player get celebrated for her confidence while another gets criticized for the same trait? Why does one player's skill get highlighted while another's gets overshadowed by comments about her attitude? This isn't new in sports or in society. We've seen this pattern play out with other athletes across different sports for decades. But in 2023, shouldn't we be past this? Shouldn't we be able to celebrate multiple stars without making one the angel and the other the demon? What's happening here reveals something much bigger than basketball. It shows how media narratives shape public perception, how racial stereotypes still influence coverage, and how we're still navigating these issues even as women's sports reaches new heights of popularity. Those media narratives we've been discussing don't just live in headlines or on TV screens. They follow players into their personal lives in truly horrifying ways. What happens when sports commentators use loaded language and create heroes and villains out of athletes? Real people take that narrative and run with it, often in the darkest directions imaginable. The human toll became painfully clear when Dijanite Carrington checked her inbox after a game. What she found would make anyone's stomach turn: an email containing the N-word, along with graphic threats to sexually assault and behead her. Let that sink in. A professional athlete received death threats containing racial slurs, all because of normal physical play in a basketball game. This wasn't some anonymous bot or fringe account. This was a real person who felt emboldened enough to put these thoughts in writing. And here's what's truly disturbing. This isn't some isolated incident. Black WNBA players have been receiving a flood of violent messages, racial slurs, and death threats following games against certain opponents. While one player is celebrated on magazine covers and landing endorsement deals, others are having to increase security and screen their messages just to feel safe. The league's response to this crisis has been telling. When WNBA Commissioner Cathy Engelbert first addressed the situation, her comments seemed more focused on the business side of things than player safety. She actually compared what's happening to the Bird Magic rivalry, saying, "But the one thing I know about sports, you need rivalry. That's what makes people watch. They want to watch games of consequence between rivals. They don't want everybody being nice to one another." Now, imagine being a player dealing with racist death threats and hearing your commissioner talk about how great rivalries are for viewership numbers. The backlash was immediate and justified. Players and fans called out this tone-deaf response, forcing Engelbert to eventually admit she had missed the mark and issue an apology. But for many players, the damage was already done. The message seemed clear that business interests came before their safety and dignity. What's equally concerning is how teams are handling this situation. While benefiting from increased attendance and revenue, some organizations aren't taking meaningful action against the toxic elements in their fan base. The Indiana Fever has welcomed the financial boost, but hasn't implemented strong measures to address the hate being directed at opposing players. It's a simple calculation: profits over principles. This situation reveals something deeply troubling about our society. These aren't just random trolls sending these messages. They're everyday people who feel justified in their hatred because of how certain athletes are portrayed in the media. When normal basketball contact gets labeled as an assault by sports commentators, it gives permission for viewers to escalate their responses into actual threats of violence. The historical context makes this even more disturbing. There's a well-documented pattern of demonizing black athletes for the exact same behaviors that are celebrated in white athletes. From Muhammad Ali to Colin Kaepernick, we've seen black athletes face unfair criticism, threats, and abuse for actions that would be praised if done by someone else. The current treatment of WNBA players is just the latest chapter in this ongoing story. This pattern creates a dangerous cycle. Media narratives shape public perception, which leads to real-world harassment, which then reinforces the original narratives. Breaking this cycle requires accountability from media outlets, leagues, teams, and fans alike. It requires recognizing these patterns and refusing to participate in them. Interestingly, some of the very athletes being used as weapons in these narratives have spoken out against the hate, yet their voices get drowned out by the louder, more sensational storylines. The nuance gets lost, and the cycle continues. Look, we need to face the truth here. Women's basketball is experiencing an incredible moment right now, but the spotlight reveals how far we still have to go. This isn't about Team Clark versus Team Reese. It's about letting these incredible athletes shine without forcing them into these tired stereotypes. The real game being played isn't on the court. It's in the media, in comment sections, and in boardrooms where decisions about coverage are made. Both these stars deserve their flowers, their endorsements, and their place in basketball history without becoming pawns in someone else's narrative. The future of women's basketball isn't just about viewership numbers, it's about respect.